Good morning, America, and it is now Saturday, September the 12th, and I find myself with a solid internet connection. For those of you that don't know, my name's Deacon Taylor, and I've been asked by Mr. Chris Keniston to be his running mate for 2016, and Chris Keniston is the man that I believe is the right choice for America in 2016 as the next president of these United States. So over the last few weeks and few months, I've been asked to start doing some videos again, and this is my next installment. Today I want to talk about the last 48 hours, I would say, that I've been watching and interacting with the world. There's been a lot of debate as Congress came back into session, and they continue to play their little game where they pretend to be at odds when in reality they are doing exactly what the heads of those two parties are telling them to do. And what I mean by that is, if you look at the parties as corporations, which they are very much corporations, I forget their exact entity structure and how they're facilitated, but if you look at Rents and Debbie as the CEO types, the day-to-day operations folks, they have a board of directors. They have people that we would call investors that are very much pushing for them to be able to accomplish the goals and objectives that they have. And where it really dawned on me was in the last midterm elections, there was this very fantastic young professional Republican candidate out of New York. And they were essentially forced to toe the party line if they wanted to get any support from the party as they were making their run in that area. And there's a lot of examples of those throughout the country. But that one in particular really stood out to me because I watched as their campaign morphed and they started to be educated on how the process really works. And that's really the part that inspires me to be so adamant about what I'm doing and willing to give away everything that mattered in order to take on this role of riding across the country and really pushing for a true change and a true choice. So one of Chris's greatest statements is, why not now? Why not us? I am someone. And obviously I'm paraphrasing that a little bit. But the point is well taken, that while the majority of people spend their time on social media, interacting with each other, and I think that's great. We definitely need to spend the time to have that social dynamic of people reconnecting and all of those wonderful things that go along with it. But I also see a whole lot of complaining and a whole lot of whining without a whole lot of action. And so instead of sitting around and waiting for someone else, we're someone. We're willing to put our butts on the line time and time again for this country, time and time again for the Constitution that we swore an oath to pretend and defend and to protect and defend, rather. And so I swore that oath at least 3 times. I know Chris swore it at least 4. And between the two of us, we have over 20 years of military service. And we didn't sign up to get rich. We didn't sign up for glory. We didn't sign up because we thought that it was going to be some gravy train for us. We signed up at 17 and 18 years old, as most veterans do, with the sole intent of this Constitution, this founding structure of our country is that important, that our lives are meaningless compared to the importance of the Republic and what our founding fathers stood for. So it is time for Americans to be Americans. I am so over the hyphenated versions of Americans. And I'm not telling you to not be proud of your heritage. I absolutely think that people that come from specific cultures should 100% be proud of their culture. But if you're an American citizen, then you're an American citizen first. And we have a moral obligation as citizens to protect and defend this nation's philosophies: liberty, freedom, equality. And even if you don't agree with what somebody else is doing in their own personal life, that is none of your business. You can obviously have your opinion about it, but when your opinion starts to infringe on their rights to live as they see fit, as long as they are not hurting another human being in our nation, then mind your own business. That's my stance. Now, I realize I'm a bit unusual because I grew up in Wyoming, so I'm supposed to be a Republican to my core. And I can tell you, when I was in the military, I thought that Ronald Reagan walked on water, and I thought that the Bush family hung the moon, because they created the illusion of really caring about the military. But then I started to research, and I started to connect the dots, and I started to understand that there's a much bigger global picture at play here. So I'm gonna try to create an analogy for you. And forgive me, this is not something that I'm really good at. But imagine in a world where California is very, very liberal and Texas is very, very conservative. Not far-fetched so far. Also imagine where we are in a collage of states that are actually independent countries. And so California and Texas, at complete odds with each other, start to battle over whose way of life is right. They both claim to be Christian, because in the United States we're predominantly Christian. And stuck in the middle is New Mexico and Arizona, full of a bunch of tribes. Not too far-fetched, right? Because there's a lot of reservation land in Arizona and New Mexico. There also happens to be a lot of the reservations that, while they hold on to their traditional heritage, they also claim to be predominantly Catholic, if you don't know that. So you've got this collage of different entities all fighting over this concept of whose way of life is right. And in the meantime, you get these other nations throughout the world that decide, well, these people are getting too violent, and so we need to intervene. And we're going to intervene, and we're going to decide how to divide up the land and how to assign resources and so forth. But then in the meantime, we're going to send in some of our biggest companies, and they're going to take over drilling and processing all of the natural resources, and they're going to make huge profits at the same time. Sounding a little bit familiar? So while everyone likes to point fingers and talk about how things in the Middle East are chaos and all of these things, you got to imagine, what would you do if it was your land? What would you do if it was your home? What would you do if another country, let's say, I don't know, Denmark. Denmark decided to come into the United States and take that role that we are taking in the Middle East. What would you do? I can imagine what the people in those rural areas, because I grew up in a very rural area, very independent-minded area, I can imagine what they would do. And I don't care who it was. I don't care if it was Jesus Christ himself that came in and started to manage that process. The American public would lose their minds, because we believe in the rights and freedoms and liberties that this country was founded on. So while everyone likes to talk about what's right and what's wrong in the Middle East, and they like to claim this high horse, high mighty attitude about their religion and their politics and all the things that are happening in the Middle East, unless you've actually walked a lifetime in their shoes, you don't understand it. You are being fed information by your own biases and by the media. And so I don't approve of what's happening over there. I don't approve of the ridiculous, radical regimes that have been oppressing the populations for centuries upon centuries. And I sure don't approve of the violence that is happening as an outcome of that. But I also don't approve of our interfering with their process of learning how to become a democratized society. They have to go through the same pains and the same frustrations and the same things that we all did in order to have the United States. And the United States didn't just magically happen. It was the process of hundreds, if not thousands of years of monarchs and dictators and socialism and communism and all the other isms, and even to the point where democracy didn't work in the past. Look at antiquity. Look at what the Greeks went through originally when they tried to run a democracy. It didn't work. And that's the birth of the republic. And there's a reason why we're a republic. There's a reason why we are supposed to focus on being the best all the time and leading by example, not intervening and interfering with international things The only reason why I can come up with that we are intervening and interfering with the Middle East is because of what happened during the OPEC oil embargo. When that happened, it completely altered our belief system and how we thought that we could control the markets so that way we could have a long-term stable economy. That is the only reason why the United States started intervening in the Middle East. There's a lot of other speculation, and there's a lot of people out there that want to connect dots that aren't connected. But when you really boil it all down, we didn't really care. The United States didn't really care about the Middle East until OPEC made a difference in our economy. And since then, petroleum has been based on the US dollar. And so all these skirmishes, all of these conflicts that would normally be local Civil War style conflicts, yes, horrific, yes, need to be stopped, yes, there's problems. There's tons and tons of problems. But at what point did it become our business? When petroleum and the petrodollar started to influence our economy. That's when we started to care. That, and oh yeah, that's right, because we had that little skirmish where we had a proxy war with Russia during the Vietnam era, where Ho Chi Minh was going to be somewhat lenient to our side and then decided to be on the other side. And there's a lot of information there that if you actually start to dig, you can really understand the politics that were involved in that. And then the Afghanistan skirmish, where again it was somewhat of a proxy war where we were going to prove to Russia that they couldn't do something that we couldn't do, and on and on and on. There's a lot of that politic dynamic globally that's happened for a long time. I even go all the way through the stuff with Israel. Israel was not always our ally. Israel was absolutely scrutinizing everything we did. We had one of their highest level infiltrated operatives, Pollard, in prison for 30 years. He was supposed to be in there for life. But now magically we're going to release him? During all of the discussions and debates about what's happening with Iran? It all seems very, very much a political play to me. And when you start putting the American way of life on the table, and you start to threaten that way of life because you're playing politics on a global scale, because you're more worried about the economy than you are worried about civil liberties and the things that our Constitution protects and defends, we have a problem. So I go back through all of this, and I still say the same thing. I'm not waiting for someone else. I'm not waiting for some hero to come along and save us from ourselves. I'm not willing to wait for someone else to be the leader that I've never seen coming through the ranks. I'm not waiting for someone else to take charge and to fix this mess, because I know we have a moral obligation as individuals to do something and do it now. And we don't need a bloody, violent revolution. We have the Constitution, we have the Bill of Rights, and we have the checks and balances systems that are still in place. The only thing that's been missing is the American public. We have let ourselves down by allowing these politicians to play the games that they're playing, and to constantly pit each other against each other, and to pit ourselves against ourselves, and to break us up all into these little tiny fractions over time. And if you really start to research the facts, you'll find that in 1987, the media had their one overarching control mechanism taken away. Fairness in Journalism, 1987, Ronald Reagan, look it up. From that point on, the media has stopped being an unbiased source. They have gone further and further and further towards this reality TV style of journalism, where it's all about sensationalism and it's all about selling copy. And it's no longer about telling us all of the facts. It's using some of the facts and then a whole lot of conjecture and not a whole lot of substance. And I see people in fear, full-blown fear and panic attacks, because they are worried about the world that the media is telling them exists. I can tell you right now, I've been in it for a little over a year now, by myself, traveling this country in various modes, and I don't see what the media is seeing. And I've been in some of the quote-unquote worst places in this country, and I still see really good people trying really hard to make a living. So while everyone wants to argue and point fingers, I say we are someone. And if you want to be involved in the most amazing point in our history as a country, get involved with the Veterans Party of America, because This is going to change, and it's going to be real change and lasting change based on the Constitution and our Bill of Rights. So, good luck, Godspeed, and God bless these United States.